Today we're going to be doing a brake job. This is a 2015 Toyota 4Runner. It's a four-wheel drive. You'll see it's got the axle. It's just the SR5 model. Shouldn't matter which model you have. If it's four-wheel drive, it'll be the same. Two-wheel drive will be very similar. We're changing these brakes because I just bought this truck a couple days ago and I noticed a pretty bad warping on the brakes. You can look. You can see there's a decent amount of brake pad left, but there is quite a bit of wear on the rotor itself here. So for that reason alone, and the fact that it's warping, we're going to change these out. You will notice that I have aftermarket wheels, and the previous owner put these spacers on. Shouldn't be a problem, just a little extra step that I'll have that you probably won't. First thing I'll do is I'll remove this wheel spacer here. I think this is a Spider Track spacer. It'll be a 19mm. I did PB blast these a little earlier, so hopefully they're not too tough to get out. Now we're going to start taking the caliper off here. To loosen the caliper, there's two bolts. There's one up top here, and there's a lower one right down here. It's a 17mm bolt, both of them. And all we're going to do right now is back these out. We're going to leave them in because we don't want the caliper to fall right now. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to get this ABS cable out of the way. There's 3 bolts we want to get that will take care of that. Let's see if we can get some light in here. So the first one is going to be right here. This guy. It's going to loosen this bracket here. The second one is the ABS cable itself. You can unclip this if you want, but I find it's easier just to remove that bolt instead. And then the third one you're going to want to do this one right here, and that'll make it so that you can pull this ABS cable completely out of the way, and you won't have to worry about busting it as you move the caliper out of the way. Okay, now your ABS and brake line are free, and we can continue to remove the caliper. We'll go ahead and wire. You can see I've got a copper wire here. We'll hook this up on the upper control arm just to anchor the caliper. Once we pull the caliper out, we'll hook it onto this to support its weight. And then finish pulling the bolts out. This guy up. Okay, now we got the caliper. It's hung, it's out of the way. Tension on the brake and ABS line is minimal or non-existent, and we can focus on getting the rest of the rotor off here. We're gonna get the rest of the rotor off here. Little trick, take this guy. This was originally holding the brake line on right here. There's, on a factory rotor, there's gonna be 2 jacking screw holes here, one here and one here. And this is the same thread as this bolt. So what you do is you'll thread that guy in, and instead of beating on this rotor here, all you gotta do is thread this guy in, and look, that thing just falls right off. If you don't have a factory rotor, you might not have those jacking screw holes, and you'll take a dead blow or something similar, and you'll just tap all the way around that rotor until the thing falls off. But having the jack screw holes is definitely beneficial. We're going to start taking the brake pads off now. These have 3 little retainers here. There's 2 here and then 1 here on the side. You're going to want to get that guy out first. Just get some needle nose, pry the center out, and then pull out from each of the pins. There's that one. And now we'll take the 2 main pins out that are holding the other 2 clips in there. Mine's a little crusty. Might take some persuading with a hammer and a small screwdriver. We'll see. Just kind of tap it all the way out the back. Now you can take your other 2 clips out. And now the old brake pads will slide right out. Next, what we'll do is we'll spread the caliper pistons out. When you put new pads in, they're going to be thicker than the old pads, which means they won't fit over the rotor, because the rotor was set up for your old brakes. So we're going to go ahead. I use a C-clamp and a piece of wood here, and you'll squeeze all 4 pistons back out. Like that. You can see the pistons are all the way retracted. Now we have plenty of room to fit the new brake pads in there around the rotor. Next, you'll slide your new brake pads in. I find it best to score them up a little bit first. I just took them to some clean concrete and did some figure 8s, flipped them, did some figure 8s again. It'll help it break in a little smoother. And right now you can just set these guys in. Try not to get your fingerprints on them if you can avoid it. Put those in, and then you want to put your springs in. Just these 2 end springs for now. Next, we'll put the little pins in. You want to make sure they go through the pad and the spring, little loop in the spring on both sides. And then you can see this little pinhole. You want to make sure that's going to be oriented correctly for our little side spring to go in. So the side spring kind of comes in at an angle like this. So you need to make sure that these are twisted correctly to accept that. Now we're through both sides, both brake pads and the little loops and the springs, and we can go ahead and put our little side spring back in. Stick the feet in first, and then you can feed that guy through its hole. Just like that. Got the calipers out of the way. Take our new rotor. It's important that you don't touch the faces on this. Or if you do, have some brake cleaner handy. I'm just gonna set it on. The lugs here. And for now, take a couple lug nuts and just seat them, just so that this thing doesn't flop everywhere when we put the caliper back on. Thanks, yes, not going anywhere. And then you'll take your caliper, bring it around, have your attach bolts, your two big attach bolts ready, because you're going to take it off the hanger right now. Slip it over the disc. And then seat the two bolts on the back. Other than that, you got most of it done already. You just gotta make sure you reattach your brake line. Remember the 3 attach points there. The torque for the caliper attach that we just did, different books tell you different things. I have a 17 millimeter bolt. Some guys have 19 millimeters. One torque is for 91 foot-pounds. Others are for 137. I'm going to go with 91 and some Loctite on this because it is the smaller bolt, and I think 137 is pretty excessive. Other than that, if you got spacers, make sure you put those back on. And when you first get in the truck, make sure you bleed them a little bit because squeezing the fluid out of the pistons means there's a lot more in your reservoir up top, so you need to pump them a few times before you go drive the thing.